Welcome to Witchin and Bitchin, the podcast. I'm your host, Darren.
I'm Vicky.
And today I want to welcome another amazing guest all the way from the US. We have David Shorey.
Yay!
Hi,
How are you?
I am well. How are
Good.
you all?
Good.
Good to see you.
You too.
Look
So,
at you serving up Halloween realness
well,
on that shirt
I
there.
actually wore this
Yes.
specifically for you because I know that we're about to celebrate Beltane.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought I could wear a t-shirt that has a phallic object, but like I thought it might be better if I wear something that's more Halloween oriented.
I don't know. Some people might think a jack-o'-lantern is phallic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you know.
I was gonna say.
Well, I know.
Trying to make it anywhere.
Vicky and I have this running joke on air that sometimes we make comments about things and we say, "Oh no, we have to save that joke for Beltane."
Yes.
Yes.
But anyway, so welcome to our show. Sorry to digress.
Thank you.
Always a tangent.
always
Always a tangent.
We
like
love a good tangent on the show. But yeah, so I guess just to obviously I have the pleasure of knowing you and connecting with you on social media, but for the pleasure of our guests, are you able to just tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from, and how you identify? I guess.
Sure. So my name is David Shorey, and I am currently living in Julian, California, which is about an hour and 10 minutes east of San Diego, so Southern California. And I identify, well, it's funny because on my social media page, on my Facebook page, it says sorcerer. I did that because I was trying to find a term that I don't, it was kind of inclusive of a lot of my traditions, but that was maybe somewhat culturally sensitive and related given my genealogy and background and all that. And also it's just it's a cool word.
I was about to say, it sounds really cool.
Yeah. So there's three main traditions that I study. The beginning tradition that I started out with was Druidry. And I call myself a student of Druidry because I think it's kind of an ongoing thing. And then also I am initiate of a spiritual tradition called the Unnamed Path, which is for men who love men, self-identified men who love men. And then the third tradition that I work with is I'm an apprentice to Orion Foxwood in his Fairy Seership Institute, the House of Bree. So all of those come together, and it's easier to say sorcerer than initiate, apprentice, druid, student, you know, all this kind of stuff. And they're like, are you done yet? What's going on here? You know?
Where else are we going?
So I think I was being lazy and saying sorcerer.
I know. I think
I
it's
like
cool.
it.
It definitely caught my attention. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think it sounds really cool, and that's the thing as well that you, like you mentioned, you touched on there with sort of culturally sort of correct or not kind of appropriating any terms or things like that as well, which it can be tricky.
It is, and you know, for example, within the Unnamed Path, we have 4 parts to the Unnamed Path, and one of the original parts is shamanism. And you know, shamanism, for a variety of reasons, there's a lot of issues around the use of that term, and I think that for our tradition, we've honestly struggled with it, and it's something that I don't think we've necessarily come to a complete agreement with using that terms, you know. But for sorcerer, I was looking at the word, and you know, it's a Northern European term that has kind of combination of different backgrounds, but it's, you know, it's a person who generally practices magic or is able to do magical things. And I thought, okay, that sounds about me, and I may have been influenced by the Sorcerer's Apprentice, you know, but I haven't made any mops walk yet, so I'm still working on that
Please, when you find that out, can you let me know?
I want to see that.
Yeah. I want to be doing that in my house, so I don't have to be doing it.
It's funny that like with words and how powerful they can be sometimes, because like for example, there's obviously such a big stigma around the word witch, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we decided to create this podcast series, is we want to kind of demystify what that word means over a series of different podcast episodes and by having different guests and stuff. Because like I guess anyway, in my own worldview, I've kind of taken the power back. Like, you can't call me a witch because I call myself one, kind of thing. Whereas when you say sorcerer, like, it instantly makes your mind go to this all-conjuring wizard like Merlin or something, like, and it's like this like powerful and da da da. You don't really think of a sorcerer as being evil, or I guess unless you maybe
Jafar.
Lord of the Rings.
If you go to Aladdin, Jafar.
Was he a sorcerer though?
Yeah, he was. Jafar the sorcerer.
Okay. Well, maybe it's just my brain was going to, like, I always picture like Merlin or someone like that.
Yeah, but I was going to say the first thing that you think of is more the Merlin type.
And it makes me picture something of grandeur, like,
Yeah, I was going to say that grand
star-covered cloak with a big pointed hat, and like, I don't know if I'm painting a picture that
well,
suits or not.
I am gay, so I may have a tendency to be a little bit flamboyant sometimes. So there is that.
Perfect. I was just like, well, fits all perfectly.
Well, I guess to start us off, like, I'd love for you to be able to like explain a little bit more about the Unknown Path, because I myself because that's actually how I met you on social media, is through the Unknown Path. Just for the listeners, I touched on it in an episode with Tommy, that I first came across the podcast series of the Unknown Path, and then from that, I think I was Googling, and I came across Buck Egrios, who I believe is your, what's the correct term?
I initiated him into the Unnamed Path, so
you initiated him. So he's your initiate, then, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Okay.
We don't.
And that's how I found you, basically.
Yeah, it's like one of those things. You get initiated, and you kind of, it's a brotherhood of equals. So
yeah, that's good.
But
But I'd love to know a little bit more about it. Yeah, because I hadn't heard about it until Darren first mentioned it. So
hashtag you're welcome.
So the Unnamed Path is a spiritual tradition for men who love men.
Yeah.
That focuses in on 4 areas: magic and prophecy, shamanism, energy healing, and death walking. And each of those represents a different aspect of magical spiritual work that men who love men have done throughout the millennia.
Yeah.
And it came about because of Eddie Gutierrez, who was also known as Hyperion. And Eddie, this was during the mid-2000s, early to mid-2000s, he himself had been a student of witchcraft and had been involved with different traditions. And he also was studying Palo and Santeria and some Afro-Caribbean traditions as well. But he was a gay man, and it was kind of that thing where a lot of these things resonated with him, but there were things about them that didn't resonate. And if you'll remember, in the States during the 2000s, it was, especially in California, there was the whole thing around gay marriage. I'm sorry?
Was that like around Prop 8 and stuff?
Yeah, so there was Prop 8, and before that there was Prop 22, which some people don't. And so there was kind of a resurgence of, in modern terms, of the gay civil rights movement. You also had trans folk come out into more prominence. You had non-binary folks start to come out. So there was kind of this new wave of folk. And you also saw, this was also a time, obviously the HIV/AIDS crisis had really devastated folks during the 80s and the 90s. Yeah. And finally there were medications, and so there was kind of I think the backdrop is that there was kind of this just like breathing out, you know, like, okay, there's some medications, they're working, people are not dying as much. And so there's a lot of just energies that were flying around. And Eddie was doing some practice around energy healing, and he was also doing shamanic journey work. And so he was doing the shamanic journey work, and he was trying to kind of get this connection. And he started seeing these symbols, and he was doing this work with other gay men, and the symbols actually were coming up in other people's shamanic journeys. And so that started kind of bringing things together. It's like, okay, what is this information? What are these symbols that are coming to me? And then he started also kind of getting some messages, doing some ancestral contact work, and realizing that there were very few modern traditions or, you know, spiritual stuff that was focused on connecting men who love men. You know, and historically, both gay men, lesbians, and transgender folk were often at the pinpoints of spirituality and magical workings, and often were viewed, because of our nature, as being hedge walkers. And having a
Between
kind
the
of a special,
genders,
so having that, you know,
I'd never even
the queerness of it, as you would say. And so he started working with some friends and started putting this tradition together. He took a lot of what he had already learned, but pulled it into a system that adapted it for use for men who love men. Now, when I say men who love men, what do I mean by that? Literally, I mean someone who identifies as male who loves someone who identifies as male. So that includes trans folks. That could be queer folks that could be, you know, part of what we do is we connect into a certain current. You know, there's all these currents of witchcraft that kind of float around, and we tap into a certain current that is connected to our capacity to love, our way of loving. And then we use that current to affect the magic that we do and the work that we do. And so, like I said, there's magic and prophecy. So that includes divination, that includes casting of spells, that includes, you know, doll work, that includes all kinds of stuff. The shamanism, as it has been called, and I acknowledge the fact that that is a very loaded term. But at the time, and to this day, there's kind of, because of the definition that's been assigned to it, there's kind of, you know, it could be, well, you're a hedge walker, or you're you know, a veil walker, or you're a you know, you're a seer, but some seers view so it's complicated, and I want to
and I muddling of all the terms, isn't it?
And I want to acknowledge that, you know, it's a loaded term, and we haven't come to quite 100% terms with where that's going to go. But that aspect of being able to you know, to cross the veil and to bring energy and magic back, or to do healing, or to engage in conversations with, whether you identify them as guides or spirits, or, you know, as you go through the different worlds, and having that conversation and that interaction. Energy healing, so calling on that energy that we have connected to our capacity to love, and we call on that, and then we bring forth that energy and affect healing, you know. And obviously all energy healing is about reminding the body that it has the ability to heal itself. You know, we're not like faith healers that we touch people and boom, your cancer is gone, or boom, you're this. Yeah, no. And also realizing that, working with those kinds of energies, when we do the energy healing, a lot of people are like, I'm an energy healer and I can do, and it's like, well, you can do what you can do, but the body and the energy of the spirit and a few million other things may have a different way for you. So to just be realistic that when I do energy healing, I am obviously working to remind the body that it can heal itself. And if that happens, wonderful. If it doesn't happen, then I have to be able to step up, step back, and let what happens happen, because it's not about me. All the energy healing is not about the individual. It's about the person who is working, that you are working with, and helping them become whole. And then the fourth part of that is death walking. And death walking is working with the dead, working with spirits of the dead, working with folks who are on this side and being midwives for the dying, offering energy and compassion and listening and doing the magical work that may need to be done to kind of open up the gates, or untangle the threads, untangle the ropes that are connecting them here, and allowing them to feel comfortable about moving forward. And then also working with those on the other side, and maybe you're doing ancestral work, and maybe you're working to kind of untangle some of the knots of trauma, ancestral trauma that happened. Maybe you're untangling that, or maybe you're building connections. Maybe you had folks who were on the other side that want to be allies and want to be aides to someone who is living on this side, and the two don't know how to communicate with each other. They don't know how to connect with each other. So doing work to try to build those connections with those individuals. So Eddie created the system. I am the third initiate. I was initiated in 2009. I think that's right. Yes. And so we now have, I think we have 43 brother initiates who are around the world. We have obviously Buck in Australia, obviously a great deal of people in the United States. And I believe we also have some students currently in Europe. So there may be some folks who are initiated who will be in Europe. And we're a tradition that doesn't, we're not like, oh, we're required to initiate, 10 people who are then required to initiate 10 people. We have teachers who initiate one person and say they're done. We have other people who initiate more than that. And it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And there are some people who will go in through the initiation or the training process and be like, this isn't for me, or I'm not ready yet. And then they will step away, and then, other people will go through, and it really is about where that person is at the time of their study.
And so, if you don't mind me asking, just in case any of our viewers are listening to, listeners. Actually, no, we have viewers on YouTube. We have listeners on podcasts. We do both. So in case anyone is interested in the unnamed path and they're wanting to know what is involved, or like if they wanted to become an initiate, is it something that's for everyone, or it's not for the faint-hearted, or like?
Well, we require your head on a no. So it is a minimum of a year of study. And I think that for all the teachers who are teaching, and for those of you who don't know, Eddie Gutierrez died in 2014 of a heart-related incident, a heart defect that he had that that took him very suddenly and without.
Yeah.
And so there were folks who were trained as teachers, and we all, and then there were other folks who weren't, but the tradition as a whole decided, we're going to keep on teaching.
Yeah.
And since 2014, I think a lot of us have realized that, originally it was like, okay, every 2 weeks we're going to have a class, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But really now it's focused in on, okay, what is the right speed for the person we're working with?
Yeah.
So I have a student who I've been working with for over a year now, and we're about a little bit halfway through, and which reminds me I need to schedule our next class with him. So it's a minimum of a year study. There is a in-person requirement for about halfway through. All of the classes can be done, except for the in-person, can be done through video. In fact, I was Eddie's first video student, which was fun, especially when it was on Skype, and sometimes Skype would go down and we'd be in the middle of a meditation.
You're talking like...
guided. Yeah, well, or I'd be in the middle of a guided meditation, and he'd be leading, and suddenly it would go out, and I'm like,
where am I going?
Where do I do? Where do I go? Yeah. So, and then at the end, there is a in-person initiation that does happen. And really the purpose, we do a lot of shadow work. So, that is, part of our system that is looking at, who you are and the totality of who you are. I'll say that a lot of people think, oh, when you do shadow work, you're working to get rid of it. No, you're not. What you're doing is you're working to be able to embrace it and bring it in and show it love. Because we're always going to have our shadows. We're always going to be, have things that we're going to react to. But when you do shadow work, you're able to recognize that, okay, this is something that's use the term triggering me, or and I have a choice to offer it love. I have a choice to offer it compassion, or I have a choice to, freak out and run around the head. So, and a lot of that is because when you do magical work, when you dive deep into those, magic is not clean. Magic is dirty. And I don't mean that as bad dirty. I mean, like, you've got to get your hands in the mud in order to be able to do the work.
You can't just buy the crystal, put it on a shelf, and expect magic to happen.
Right. And it's and so when you do that, you also have to be able to recognize that you may see yourself in some of that dirt. And if you're going to be able to work with it, you've got to be able to work with it and so and have the ability to draw on yourself and from your experiences to be able to relate to the people that you're working with. Every little bit of magic that you do puts a little bit of you in it. It doesn't take away from you, but you put a little bit of yourself in it. And as such, that the more you're able to see yourself in your magic, the more visceral it can be. And so that's why we do really focus in on shadow work.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm gonna drink some tea now. That was a lot.
No, because in all honesty, I've listened to. Oh, hang on. I'm not gonna lie. I've probably listened to about 2/3 of the podcast series. But even there were some episodes in there where I'm like, okay, I was listening to it while commuting to work. Was I really listening, or was I just playing it in the background?
Right.
But it's one of those traditions that I've found anyway from what I've been listening to, is it's kind of all encompassing. It touches so many different things that I guess for someone who's a bit of a book geek, it's like, if I'm to go down the rabbit hole on every topic that's discussed in the podcast, I feel like it would be like an entire lifelong journey to learn all the things, which to me makes sense why, you guys have at least a year to initiate into the path.
Yeah. And I think that talk about initiation, and I think people sometimes view initiation as being the end. Initiation just means just look at the word initiate, to begin. So it's it's like you basically initiation for us means that you're able to do some things some ways somehow. And then you go out and you apply that in your everyday life, and whether that's and to the degree that you want to. So there are some brothers who are really who are more public than others. There are some who have gone through the year and now are just doing their own personal work. And so for us, initiation, like, it doesn't mean that you're all great and mighty. It just means that you're not going to go out and trip over your own tennis shoes. Well, you might. But,
I was just saying, I think it doesn't matter if I was initiated or not, I'd still be falling over.
Right.
I feel like the air sign would trip over a pocket of air.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
So I guess if someone is interested in coming into the unnamed path, what's the recommended approach? Like, do they need to have a background in any particular knowledge base or anything, or they just literally just listen to the podcast and see if it resonates?
So so I would start off with the podcasts, and caveat there, the podcasts are now 10 years old. So there's certain references that are in the podcast that are probably a little dated, but the material overall is good.
It's still good. Yeah.
We do have a Facebook page. So search for The Unnamed Path on Facebook. You can go to unnamedpath.com, which is where the podcasts are. I believe you can also still access them via iTunes. I'm not so sure about some of the other, but if you do search for Unnamed Path podcast, you should be able to bring it up. And then you will see there's not really a list of the brothers who are teaching, so generally we'll post them on Facebook. But if you're not a Facebook person, which I completely understand, you can also email theunnamedpath@gmail.com. And that will put you into a mailbox and just say you're interested and where you're at. You don't need a magical background. I think what I would say you would need is a willingness to be open, to maybe put your assumptions or maybe some preconceived notions aside. If you have magical training, or even if you are an initiate of a spiritual tradition, I would say don't push it away, but a lot of people want to just kind of
open mind again.
Not because there's no value in what you know, but there is value in being open and learning to do new things, and some things may be completely new, some things may be completely foreign. For example, you have certain magical traditions that will cast a circle. We do something called raising the great crossroads. Which other traditions do as well, but we want to acknowledge that we are in a magical world all the time, that magic is around us, that spirit is around us, and so that's what we do, and we work to really so it's different things for that maybe other people have done. So
I'd like to touch on when you just said then that magic is all around, and that we actually live in that every day, because a lot of times we do often perceive it as something separate, whereas it's kind of always there, isn't it? We're just tapping into magic, it. Like that's often we're
gonna do magic now. Like, I'm gonna take it off my shelf. I'm gonna open it up, and it's gonna, I think that we were greatly influenced by the Christian worldview of that God is there and we are here, and there's this separation of the priest, or but if you think back further, you think back to pre-Christian times, and there was this animism, this spirit that everything had spirit around you, and that there was a connection that you can make with those energies, and that you didn't need to necessarily have someone all the time to be able to have those connections, and I think, stepping back even further than that, the world itself is magical. I mean, anytime you watch like a National Geographic show, or you watch, and you watch how the world is, it's like, wow, like how did that happen? And I think there's I think magic and wonder are pals that work together. So in wonder there is magic, in magic there is wonder. And so just going through your daily life and being able to breathe in air and walk and listen and hear and see and taste and feel, in and of itself is a magical act. And then you have the ability, because of those connections that you make with the world around you, those whether it be perceived or maybe visceral or maybe psychic connections, you have the ability to kind of tug the strings of the world around you. And I know we had talked earlier about something that I brought up, which was the trim tab. So when you are sailing a very large ship, like an aircraft carrier or a cruise ship or something like that, and you want to turn the ship, what happens is you're on the deck of the ship and you turn the wheel. Although in modern terms, I guess it's a little thing, but I'm thinking,
like the big old pirate ships
kind of thing. Yeah.
Get it screwed around.
So that turns, but it doesn't turn the rudder, because the rudder itself is big, and you would need a lot of, because of the size of the ship, etc. You need something really big to turn the rudder. So what they have on the rudder is a little teeny rudder, and that's called the trim tab. And when they turn the ship, what you're doing is you're turning that trim tab. And what that trim tab does is it then turns the rudder. And then that then turns the ship. So my perception of magic is, and working with the magic around us, is that when you do things, all you have to do is you can do a little, which will do a lot. And because it's oftentimes that we as magic workers get overwhelmed.
Definitely.
Look what's happening in the United States as we speak. There's a lot of craziness. There's a lot of when Donald Trump assumed the office of president, there was a lot of magical workers who were doing things directly at him, right? They were like, okay, we're gonna throw magic at him, we're gonna throw this, but maybe, as we're starting to find out, maybe the magic needed to go to the investigators who were investigating finances. Maybe they were going into things about other things that he's done, and then that has a knock-on effect that then goes back to him. And that's an example of some of this, is that sometimes it's when you do magic, it's all great and wonderful to try to hit the main target, but maybe you can do something around the main target that'll have an effect on them.
And sometimes it's that simplest thing is what creates the biggest change.
Mm-hmm.
We often
Mm-hmm.
go for, like you said, go for the big grand stuff, but it's the smallest change in the right direction that
Right.
has the biggest effect.
And
Yeah, because I was gonna say you
that's
could do
part of
that.
what we. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was
Sorry.
gonna say you could do that big grand gesture thing, but then
Yeah.
you could totally miss the mark, and then you've
Mm.
done
Mm-hmm.
this big elaborate thing, but the result isn't what you wanted because what you thought you wanted and where you've ended up are two different. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
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 I know I'm not explaining it very well, but it's
No,
like
no, you are.
You've sent that big
all that
flow of
energy to that
energy to
spot,
that
and
place, and
yeah,
it's
and you
come
realize
out.
that where you
Now
wanted to
you've
land was over there.
right,
Yeah.
or you've exercised all your energy for the,
Yeah, that's right.
and you're like, okay, I'm exhausted because I actually put a lot of myself into, which will,
Mm.
you necessarily you could use that energy around you, but it does take um it's almost like firing all the cannons and maybe one will hit but the rest miss, and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
well,
Oops.
that
No,
didn't
no.
work very well, but yeah.
I'm out of cannons now. Out of
Right.
cannonballs. I can't go.
Right. So yeah, so it's really is t- focused in on taking utilizing the magic in the best way that you
Mm.
can.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that sometimes you shouldn't go all out and aim
Yeah.
for the main target, because that could work. It's just be mindful of what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. And that's something else I wanted to, which you mentioned earlier, but then it also ties in with what you were just saying with how America is at the moment, but is that ancestral trauma and
Uh-huh.
everything that's kind of coming up into the forefront now within the world, and how
Yeah.
that's kind of affecting everything.
Yeah.
What's your kind of thoughts on all of the ancestral work and ancestral trauma?
Well, I think for me, it's some of the most important work that needs to be
Yeah.
done now.
Yeah.
Just speaking from the United States and in what we are going through, you know, um, and I know that in some ways you can relate to what
Yeah, I think
basically what's happened in Australia.
it's a worldwide thing, really,
Yeah.
probably now, isn't it?
So one of the most interesting things that part of the training for the fairy seership work that I do
Yeah.
is working with the ancestors, and we do a particular exercise where we go to detangle the threads of the knots of our ancestors, and literally there's a thing where we comb their hair and we comb the knots out of our ancestors from
Wow.
the river of
Yeah.
blood.
Yeah.
And in the United
I'm loving the
States,
imagery, by the way. I'm actually,
yeah,
I'm absolutely loving the combing my ancestors' hair with the river of blood. Like I'm loving it.
yeah. Well, it's
It is. It's perfect.
No, it's good.
yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
So the beginning with the United States, people fleeing England, coming over here, and then doing the same types of colonizing that they themselves were coming away from.
Yeah.
You had folks who were we've been watching my partners I have been watching a show called Time Team. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a
No, I don't know that
BBC
one.
show that ran
Oh,
from
I'll note that one down.
1995 to 2015. And it's an archaeological show where they go to a certain location and they have 3 days to excavate this area and come up with kind of an understanding of what had happened in this area. And the reason I bring that up is that they talked about, it talks about the different aspects of conquering and battles that have happened in the United Kingdom and England from beginning, and Celts and then Romans and the Dark Ages and Anglo-Saxons and Normans and all that. Each time laying in a certain kind of ancestral trauma, and I really blame the Roman Empire. I mean, I'm going to go back and say,
but we go right back. That's where it is.
right. I mean, I think that partly because the Roman Empire went in and while it did take in a lot of cultures and say, okay, you can continue to practice your beliefs, you can continue to do that. It also was very sure to say, okay, you're still going to be in alignment with what we want. You're still going to, you know, eventually you're going to dress like we dress. You're going to talk like we talk. You're going to act like we talk, like we act. And then you had things like, you know, the conquest of Boudica. You had the killing of the Druids. You had all those kinds of things, which created this energetic trauma. And you know, every time there is a culture that takes over another culture and does it in a violent way, you're creating these knots of trauma. And a lot of people are like, what do you mean? It's just like, no one, that doesn't mean anything. Well, actually, it's proven in a genetic level. There's a thing called epigenetics, and epigenetics are basically, and I'm going to kind of butcher the what it is, but basically your DNA gets affected by trauma. And there's little nodules or little bumps of trauma that will appear on your DNA. And maybe it'll swap out a gene, or maybe it'll have an impact. And that DNA will then get transferred to your children. And then if they have trauma, then that DNA will get transferred to the child. And goes on and on, generation by generation, age by age. And so we are seeing, you know, this ancestral trauma in the United States that goes all the way back to, you know, the founding or the conquering of this country, and all the different aspects, whether it be the killing and murdering of Native Americans, you know, the capturing and enslaving of African Americans, the impacts on Chinese, on Mexican, Spanish, you know, the whole gambit. And you know, people are like, well, why are people rioting? Why are people expressing anger? Why are people doing this? And it's like, because they're not just reacting from their own personal experience. This is this is a genetic expression of the rage and of the horrors that people have felt and dealt with for thousands of years, for hundreds and thousands of years. Is it unchangeable? Is it uncurable? Is it unfixable? No, it's not. Actually, there's things that can be done, but you have to acknowledge it. You have to say that, you know, you as an African American person currently have systemic racism and systemic hostility that is against you. And so let's unpack that, and let's acknowledge that, and let's work through that. And what can we do to ensure that the epigenetics, or the things that have come through your lived experience and your ancestors' lived experience, how can we create a world where those traumas don't get translated on, or if they are, they have the safety and the support and the resources to be able to work through them and to help heal them. And we don't do that in the United States. I mean, in South Africa, they had a Truth and Reconciliation Committee. In other countries around the world, they had conversations about genocide, about, you know, cultural abuse, all these kinds of things. And we don't do that. In the United States, the conversations are, you know, oh, well, they're just trying to take advantage of the system, or, oh, they're just this, or they're just that.
You know, it's times like this that I actually see there's a lot of similarity between the US and Australia. And I'm just being straight up, because like a lot of people bring it, like when the whole BLM movement happened in the States, people in Australia were starting to get involved, and everyone's like, why are we doing BLM here? It's not a thing here. I'm like, explain what happened to our Indigenous people, please. Can you remind me again where they are and where they exist in society and what we have done to them?
Right.
And they're like, oh.
And I don't want to be stereotypical, but you know, if you look at some of the early founders of Australia, were folks who had their own traumas, who were prisoners that had their own, you know.
Well, prisoners of war. They literally were the convicts. They were literally came here in shackles. So
right. So they came with their own, traumas, and truthfully, the United States too. I mean, white people are weird. I will just say that white people are weird. And but we have traumas too. And I'm not trying to say that our traumas are better or worse or whatever. But and I think that's part of the conversation that isn't happening, is that we're talking at each other.
Yes.
We're not talking with each other.
We're trying to one up each other. Say, oh, well, you
Yeah.
did, well, I had that. Oh,
Right.
Yeah.
not as bad as this thing that my culture went through. It's like,
it's this constant divide and that constant thing of who's been more traumatized than the next or whatever. But it's just about listening and opening that conversation.
I was going to say, even on a simplistic level, like even when you have a bad day, like just in general in life, I'm not talking big things on trauma. I'm just talking if you have a bad day, the moment someone in your sphere says that they've had a day that you, in your mind, decide that their day was worse, you then feel the need to not voice it because you feel like, oh, well, I can't complain now because their day was worse. When I actually coach people to say, well, no, it's not up to you to decide that their day was worse than yours. Just voice how you're feeling that day.
Right.
It's expressing your feelings. It's expressing what you're going through. That doesn't diminish what the other person goes through in the slightest. So it's like, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's like the whole conversation about white fragility and white entitlement and all that, and that is a thing. We have a structural society that favors white people and favors white culture more so than it does communities of color. But there's people who've grown up poor. There's people who have lived in situations where they haven't been as privileged. And part of the conversation where it gets kind of icky and stuck is that sometimes you have folks who white folks who are like, well, I grew up like this, or I had this, or and again, it's this one-upmanship, this lack of it's trying to say, well, you may have been this, but I also have this, versus, hey, why don't we look at the system as a whole? And why did the system allow that to happen to me? And why did the system allow it to happen to you? And what can we do collectively to come together and say that we want better conditions for everyone, and that the aspect of providing for people isn't limited. I mean, frankly, the whole thing of, well, if it's kind of like the pie argument, that if you take a bigger slice of pie, that there's going to be less pie for the rest of the people. Well, guess what? There's no pie. It's not about a pie thing. It's we as people of the world have the collective ability to really provide for the people of the world. What it takes is, not socialism, not communism, but it takes the ability to see yourself in the other person, and then therefore make decisions based on things that will raise everyone to a point of where they can live. And a lot of that involves having conversations, stepping up, stepping back, listening, and feeling. And I talked with you guys earlier about that as well. Is basically,
I'd love to hear more about it.
So you step up and you do what you can do, but you also step back so that the other person who's there can step forward or can also listen.
Give them a chance to speak as well.
And then listening and feeling, what am I hearing? What am I feeling? How do the two relate? What am I reacting to? What is being triggered in me, and why is that happening? What is the trauma that I'm experiencing? And how can I see the other person in me? And that's a magical act in and of itself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And it's funny because it's actually quite a simple thing. When you think about it, realistically, it's simple. It's get out of your head, bring it back to the heart space. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we keep trying to over intellectualize everything that we do. We try to overthink things. We try to over plan things. Like sometimes it's just a matter of like, just pause for a second and tap into oneself. And then, yeah, exactly that. Observe what's going on around you and feel what the other person is feeling. Like it's not a hard thing to do, but unfortunately it's hard for some.
Yeah.
And we have, you know, and we have, getting back on politics for a second, you know, we have in the White House an individual
Wait,
who,
an American talking about politics? No.
I know.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
We have an individual in the White House who, you know, in as much as I really want to hate him, in actuality, I pity him. And I pity because this is an individual who exemplifies the human ego. He exemplifies, you know, human trauma. He exemplifies all the different aspects of um, hurt and harm that that people feel. And in many ways, and I just was thinking about this. I think that's one of the reasons why there are folks who have those traumas who relate to him, because you know, they see someone who has an ego and they want an ego. They see someone who maybe they you know, is reacting in a certain way that they can relate to because they've reacted in that way out of circumstances.
Yeah.
And you know, he's not happy. He may say he's happy, but he's not happy. He's got the highest office in the country, and he's still not happy because there's all that internal stuff that he's, you know, all the ego, all the self, you know, the things that he was told as a kid, the things that he grew up with, the expectations. And so I'm not excusing his acts. I mean, I think the man is crazy. Well, maybe crazy as a fox, but he is psychologically unstable, and it scares me that he has the ability to, you know, pull out a card and pull someone over and open up a box and give them a code and they launch the nuclear missiles. But I think it's you know, there's so many ironies for 2020, clear vision, you know,
Yeah,
being able
clear
to
vision,
see,
isn't it?
right?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of
Yeah.
clear things.
Right. So here's
Yeah.
an individual that's clearly an exemplification of the human ego, unbridled. And so it's you know, if anything, this is an opportunity for people to see, if they have the ability, you know, what happens when you just, like, you know, let yourself go and you don't do that spiritual work, or you don't do that inner reflection, you don't do that grounding and centering. You don't have empathy. You know, this is a man who I don't think has empathy. And that is so amazing, given the fact that he is supposedly representing, you know, the people of the United States.
I mean, I don't know if this is like going off on another tangent, but I'm pretty sure I read on somewhere online. It may have been Facebook actually, but that was someone was sharing something that, like, I didn't know what it was based on. I didn't even click to read it, but it was basically someone saying that he claims that he's immune to COVID.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
he
like,
did say that.
oh my God, I don't even want to click on that because I could just feel myself cringing and yelling at my phone if I actually read the words, because it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. One of my friends actually trolls him on Twitter, and just like she trolls every post he does. She trolls him and says stuff because she wants to be blocked by him. I'm like, is that your life goal?
I
She
was
goes,
just
yes,
saying,
Yeah.
I want to be blocked by Trump. I'm like, why?
Why?
Anyway, I digress.
But even
No,
coming back to that, is that I think that also really highlights the importance of, within magical workings and spiritual workings and things like that, how important it is for that deep inner work, because we are dealing with powerful forces and energies and things like that. And without that healing or that acknowledgement of, say, like the ancestral trauma and those sort of things that are, and like you mentioned, like the trauma bonding, because you're seeing that in somebody else, without that deep centered shadow work or that ancestral work, that there is, I don't know, cause for it's something that is really important. And I think sometimes it's often missed or kind of glossed over a little bit with people coming into sort of that magical area.
Well, because it's like, oh no, you go.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's like we've got this culture of everyone's focusing on love and light and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, not love and light. You need to focus on the dark stuff too. And when I say dark, I'm not saying, you know, that dark is bad, just that you need to focus on all this suppressed, repressed shit.
The shadow, the hidden.
You need to deal with that. Otherwise, pointless having a torch if you're not going to illuminate what's in the dark.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Like
exactly.
A torch is useless if you're not using it to explore the dark.
Right.
Anyway, I'm going on another tangent. We'll park that.
No, it's good, and it reminds me, you know, some of the work that we do with the unnamed path, where so our deity system is different than some others in that we have a light god and a dark god, and a light goddess and a dark goddess, and basically the light god is a guardian and overseer of the upper world. The dark god is he's light god it works with the spirit guides, and the dark god works with ancestors and the mighty dead, and then we have the light goddess, which is kind of all of manifestation, and the dark goddess, who is and destiny, and the dark goddess is fate, and stirs her cauldron, works with the river of blood. And we talk about, we work in the unnamed path, that, you know, those who are more drawn to the light god are more kind of heady and you know, like big picture and or light goddess, and you know, those who are drawn to the dark goddess or dark god are more kind of visceral and you know, but what we do is we work to bring both of them, you know, into us, and because you can be all heady and you know, enlightened and all that, and not, you know, be grounded, or not be able to like tie your shoes, you know.
That's it.
Or you could be all visceral and, you know, fight, fuck, sect, you know, all that kind of stuff, and not like and just like be all
that more primal.
and so what it is really is light and dark, you know, or however you want to define it, not so much about balance, but recognizing both, you know, knowing that, okay, maybe I am more of a person who is more visceral and tangible, and discussions about, you know, black holes and you know, quantum physics or all that is kind of like, oh, I don't get that, you know, but I can still appreciate it and still realize that it's part of who I am. So I think that as we go through, you know, magic, there's folks who are like, oh, I'm a dark, evil, you know, blah, 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 witch, you know. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know, that's nice. And then you're going to burn yourself out. And, you know, it just, you know, and then there's the folks who are, oh, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light. I'm like, oh my God, come down to earth, please. You know, it's
just bring it down a notch.
I'm just gonna like tie some concrete around your ankles. And
right, exactly.
That's it. It's about creating that harmony.
And in order for me to do magic, I have to tie into all of those aspects. I can't just simply rely on one or the other, because again, it's all of those are intertwined in who we are and what we do in our everyday lives. And magic, you know, magic is, and we have the opportunity to tie into it. Like I said earlier, you know, it's all around us, so we can utilize tools, or, you know, all these different things to tie into it, and just work with it, and have fun with it.
That's it.
One question I do have for you then, so on this topic, because obviously we could sit here and unpack this topic for like episodes and episodes and episodes. I feel anyway, like when it comes to ancestral trauma. And who knows? Maybe this is a segue into future episodes with you, where we unpack it on a deeper level.
Sure.
But what I'd like to, I guess, touch on is like, what can people who are listening to this or in the magical community, like, what can we do as practitioners of our various paths and traditions do to help with the healing that is so needed right now? Like, and I'm not just talking about light a candle on your altar every night. Like, what are things we can actually do that's going to benefit the masses? I don't know if this is opening up another can of worms or.
Well, it's a good can of
Pandora's
worms
box.
to open up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Make it a normal conversation. You know, when you're working with you know, your fellow coven members or grove members or whatever, you know, have conversations about what it means. And there's a thing called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And if folks go online, they can Google ACEs. And there's actually a test that you can take that will rate your ACEs level. And basically that's the amount of trauma that you had experienced as a kid. And then that then has an impact on you as an adult and how you go through the world. And so I think, first of all, recognizing your own trauma will allow you to say, okay, so when this person, when I see another person who reacts to this, can I understand why? When I see someone who gets really, you know, when we riots because someone got shot and it triggers a reaction to them, does it trigger a reaction to me and something I've experienced? You know, doing the work of, at a magical level, also interacting with your ancestors. Say you have ancestors that perhaps participated in slave trade, or maybe you had ancestors who didn't treat people very well. Or maybe you had ancestors who suffered sexual assault or some kind of physical assault. Do some ancestor work with them. So yeah, light a candle, but sit down and whether it be doing things like creating an ancestor's altar, where perhaps you have pictures of them or things that represent them, and then you go and you bring them water, or you bring them food, or you bring them wine, or maybe you just sit with them. And you extend yourself, open yourself, and just say, I'm here to listen. There are, you know, I talked earlier about the work that we did in the fairy seership with combing out the knots. You can create your own kind of magical working around that, in that maybe you envision your ancestor sitting in front of you and you see these knots of trauma, and you lovingly go and you comb out their hair and you talk through, and all of this combines into doing that kind of work. Recognizing it in yourself, recognizing it in others around you, and then working with your ancestors. And really then having conversations with other people outside your sphere. Say you've got coworkers, and I'm not saying go out and, you know, proselytize about this, but you know, the situation is.
I mean, you might.
Right.
You might.
Right. But if it comes up or something, don't shy away from it. Let's have that conversation.
Or maybe there's a opportunity for, say your workplace has trainings, and they're looking for ideas about that. Maybe having a presentation about ACEs, maybe having a presentation about trauma and its impact on folks. You know, we've got so many webinars and things that are around that, you know, that may talk about that. Maybe you share that on your Facebook page or your Instagram or your Twitter. And so again, it's that whole thing about not trying to turn the ship with the rudder, but turning a little, you know, so you're going to have an influence on the people around you, and then they may have an influence on the people around them. Et cetera, et cetera,
Spheres
et cetera.
of influence that just expand, like ripples out.
So that
No, you go.
But I would say that, so that is what I would say is some
Mm.
things that you can do. It's not everything, but it
Yeah.
is something.
But
And
yeah, that's
something is
it. It's
better than
somewhere to
nothing.
go. That's right.
Yeah.
It's somewhere to go. And I think that's something I always sort of think like, be the change you want to see in the world. So it has to start with you first. And then from there, you can ripple it out a little bit.
Yeah, it's like there's a because obviously working in the coaching space, I'm always looking at like inspirational thought leaders and stuff, and seeing what kinds of things they talk about. And there's whilst it's nothing to do with witchcraft, but there's a public
Everything
speaker,
has to do with witchcraft.
maybe.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, I stand corrected.
It is. It is.
So, in that case, Lisa Nichols, if you're listening, you're a witch. No, but Lisa Nichols is actually a public speaker who I absolutely love. Like, I love hearing the way she speaks and stuff like that. And she's got this particular video that I watch over and over and over again. It's one of those feel-good ones that whenever I'm lacking direction or focus or something, and I feel like I'm not doing enough, I always go back to this video. And in it, there's this one line that she says, it says, however you step, just step. And that's like the tagline that I remember from that. I mean, it goes on about other stuff too, but it's like, it doesn't matter how small the gesture may be to you, bringing back to that trim tab analogy, it's like, it's a tiny thing, but it has a ripple effect.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be this, I'm going to do this huge rally and we're going to have tens of thousands of people and we're going to march into Congress and we're going to change the laws. It doesn't need to be that.
Right.
It can be a simple conversation with your neighbor who is perhaps a little naive to what is really going on in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and two things I wanted to, that triggered in my mind what you just said is that have you heard of Brene Brown?
Oh,
yeah.
Have I heard of Brene Brown?
Yes.
I have every book.
Yeah.
I have signed up to so many things of hers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brene Brown has 3 videos that I recommend that all my students watch, and then I require them to give me their personal feedback. And one is the Power of Vulnerability one, which is the one that everyone knows of. The second one is On Shame, which is a follow-up. And then the other one is The Man in the Arena.
And I've seen that one.
Yeah. So those, I would recommend folks watch those.
Hashtag super fan.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I would say is that which has now lost my brain, so I'm going to just try to remember it, and I can't. So was
that another one of her videos, or
no? It was something related to what you were talking about, but oh God, what was it? See, this is what happens when
I know.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It'll come back to you.
Yeah.
It'll come back to you.
But it is that power, that vulnerability, and all of those kind of things that really have that basis in magic.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
And life.
The whole thing of Brene Brown, which a lot of people get confused, they say that like, now it's happening to me. I've just lost it.
It's contagious.
So people think that like vulnerability is a sign of weakness, but it's actually not, because in order to be vulnerable, it's actually, you need to have courage to be vulnerable, because you've got enough courage to open yourself up to what you may receive.
That's right.
And to me, that's why I love Brene Brown's work, because I overlay that into what I do in my practice of witchcraft, because it's like to be vulnerable and to have that courage to go into those darker parts of yourself, and who knows what you're going to uncover. Like,
that's right.
You don't know what's lurking down there, like,
and
it's until you do the work, you're never going to grow.
Another author I would recommend is Sherry Huber. Sherry Huber is a practicing Zen Buddhist in the United States. There's a book called There's Nothing Wrong with You, and it's CHERIHUBER. But she is a person who comes from a Zen Buddhist background, and talks a lot in her books about these messages that we have been told as we're growing up, and then how it how it defines who we are, because it lays these messages, and then we react to those messages. The human brain continues to evolve and grow until the age of about 24. And so, you're laying in these neural pathways. The human brain, as it's growing up to age, I think 4 or 6, is taking in all this information,
everything.
Yeah.
You're just a
everything,
sponge.
and then
Get out of my
suddenly
head.
it stops. It stops because it's filled its Rolodex. And I don't know if Tommy talked about this in his thing, but his interview, but it fills the Rolodex, and then because it's easier, the vision goes in, it goes to the brain, it goes to that Rolodex, and it pulls something similar, and then that's how you perceive the world. If you filled your Rolodex with all these certain types of imagery or negative things, then that's what your Rolodex is gonna feed to. And so part of this ancestral trauma work, part of this healing work, is to take those cards and maybe cross out some of those things and do some rewriting. And so it's continual. This is not. I'm going to be working on this for the rest of my life and beyond, conceivably. But there's no wrong time to start it. You could be 98 and do it, and you can be 8 and do it. And really, it's scary work, because we're all out here, but when you start going in here, it gets scary.
Definitely.
But it's noble work, and people who do it, especially those who are active in practicing witchcraft and doing witchcraft, you really need to do it.
And so this is what I'm loving, because having these conversations, people in today's society have this very I don't know how to word this, but they just have a certain view on witchcraft, and they don't realize that there's so much overlay, because like what we're describing right now with ancestral trauma, well, firstly, if anyone doesn't know what a Rolodex is, it means you're very young. But thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, all our young listeners. If you had to Google Rolodex, then thank you. Tell your friends we want more young viewers or young listeners. So what you talk about there, and Tommy did briefly touch on it, like that's the neuro-linguistic programming world, or NLP world. We call that delete, distort, and generalize. So we put a filter, and we either delete the information, distort it, or generalize it to suit our narrative, or to suit our view on the world, because of all of the conditioning and beliefs and things that happen to us. So we view the world through a certain lens. And so like, I love that we can take something that's witchcraft or magic, and we put this spin on it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now we're talking life coaching. What? How did we get there? And so like our listeners are going to listen to this going, oh, I thought we were talking about something. It's all like hocus pocus and
spells and rituals.
Like, what do you think we do spells for?
Right.
Spells to turn our neighbors into toads. we're doing spells to heal. Well, okay, maybe sometimes. But like, people think that we do, that what we're doing is so weird and out there, but it's really not. We're helping ourselves and others heal generational trauma or ancestral trauma. We're also helping people heal in the present state. We're also like divining information to help us on our future path. Like, sorry, I know I'm going off on another tangent again, but like it's just
but it's not. It's all kind of weaves into. Yeah, that's right. It all weaves in together
in so many spaces. Like you're taking bits from all these different paradigms and ways of thinking, and we just call it witchcraft. Realistically.
Well, how many times has someone said, "Hey, could you do a love spell for me?" And you're like, "Okay, so let's start with that. So, do you love yourself?"
Yeah.
What?
No.
Do you love yourself? What does that have to do with me? Well,
it's you that we need to do it on. Yeah, like I think I said that to a friend once. They're like, "Oh, can you do a love spell for me?" I'm like, "Oh, what did you like?" And I sat down and entertained it as a joke for a bit. I said, "Oh, so what do you want?" She's like, "Oh, well, there's this guy that I really like, and I really want to attract him." I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna need a lock of your hair." She's like, "My hair? Don't you want his hair?" I said, "No, I need some of your hair." She goes, "Why?" I'm like, "Honey, the spell needs to be done on you. Because you have such a fixed view on what you think you want in life. I need to fix you, not him."
Right.
She's like, "What? No, you're not touching my hair." And then anyway, the rest doesn't matter. It was just like me being a teenager filled with teenage angst of all this kind of stuff, but whatever. Moving along. Sorry. I don't even know why I put that in there.
But that's what it comes back to, though. Like you said, it's that, do you love yourself first? It's always these external things that people often perceive, but it's really that internal
Well, even
work
that, the whole
creates
shadow.
that. Yeah.
Even the concept of the shadow, it's basically the things that trigger us in others are the suppressed and repressed things within us that we don't want to deal with. So it's like that person that, I mean, for me, I'm talking about my triggers now. The person that likes to cut people off mid-sentence, I get triggered by that, but I'm that guy. I'm the Katarina. Because I totally just did that to Vicky now. See, I told you. Australians,
I do it too.
Yeah, we get triggered about the things that we see in others that we don't like about ourselves. You know, the person who always has to one-up everyone. I get triggered by that. It's because I like to one-up people, not intentionally. It's unintentional and it's subconscious, but it's, yeah.
So Orion Foxwood, if folks have not read, there's he has 4 books, 2 that are on his fairy seership work, which are great. He also has 2 that are more focused on his magical and his Appalachian conjure work. And I always do this. It's Candle in the Crossroads and Flame and the Cauldron.
Yeah, I've got Flame and the Cauldron.
Yeah. And in it talks about the 4 dampers of the spirit. And the 4 dampers are the desire for absolutes, the resistance to change, the oh shoot.
Where's Google when you need it?
Desire for absolutes, resistance to change. Oh crap. David, you're on a live interview and you're gonna...
We're totally not judging you right now. Like, it's totally fine. In all honesty, like, in today's day and age, the internet, like, I like it when people use the internet for valuable things. And right now we're trying to educate listeners, so use it. We don't have to rely on...
All right, I can do this. I have the technology.
I have the power.
That actually does bring up another topic, but I'm just going to say it now to remind us later when we get to it. Oh.
I think I found...
Katarina.
Sure.
Now who's been Katarina?
Yeah,
I got it.
I do it. Oh, you got it? Good.
The illusion of isolation, the desire to possess, the resentment of change, and the desire for absolutes. So this whole thing about the fact that you are isolation, illusion of isolation, that you are separate from, you know, that you don't have, you know, I come from a recovery background. And so there's this thing called terminal uniqueness. No one else knows exactly what I went through. I am so special.
You wouldn't understand. You didn't.
You wouldn't understand. No. And then out of that comes, you know, desire for desire for absolute. So everything's going to be, you know, this is how it is. Resentment of change. You know, we can't have that. You know, those kinds of things really feed into this view of self and how you interact with the world around you. And Tommy talks about them in terms of a diagnostic. So if you're going through an experience and you know, these things pop up, so where is this originating from? Is it originating from a feeling of isolation? Or do you feel like you need to control? Do you feel like you need absolutes? You know, are you resenting change? What's going on here?
Joking. I will control everyone in my life.
How's that working out for you?
Yeah.
Well, considering my husband is a Capricorn, not very well.
Capricorns I'm a double Taurus and Tommy's a Leo. How we got together, I don't know, but you know.
He's just a big kitty cat. But Leos, they're just big kitty cats, really, when you boil it down.
I was going to say, look at that look. I don't think so.
No, but in all honesty, like cat behavior.
Just tell them they're pretty. Just tell them they're pretty, and they're like,
exactly.
So
okay.
Yeah. Whereas Taurians, actually, no. Let's not go on that another day.
Yeah.
Because I could talk about star signs. Like Vicky knows this because she was in my tarot course. And when we got onto the topic of astrology, Like I can sit here and rattle off analogy after analogy after analogy of every one of the star signs. I'm not an astrologist in the slightest. I just talk about the common traits or vices of each of them, and I always paint them. I always paint every star sign in its worst form, because you know I'm a realist. I call it what it is. My husband is stubborn as fuck, like you know, because Capricorns, they're a freaking mountain, and you will not budge them. You can try.
But they ain't going.
Yeah, and we're stubborn too. And just feed us, and we'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. With a Taurine, I always say to people, like, they don't want to move, but then just hang a carrot in front of their nose and, and crack the whip a couple of times and then get going. But then I also explain you guys saying that Taurians are like a boulder, like it won't move itself, but give it a decent enough shove on the edge of a cliff, and
it'll go.
God forbid you're on the other end of that.
Yeah.
Because once that thing's hurling at you, you're just collateral damage.
Yeah.
So when you
then we're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm done
and
now.
everyone else is like, you know, in the wake, and we're like, okay, we're done. You know, and we move on, and people are like, how do you move on so quickly? You're like,
yeah, because
know,
it's done.
it's
We're
done.
finished.
I finished
So
it.
when you say you're a double Taurus, I'm intrigued now. Which so your sun sign and what other sign? Your moon.
My sun and moon are both Taurus.
Oh. But you're not born in the year of the bull by any chance, because that would just.
No, you're the tiger.
Okay.
So I'm a wood tiger, I think. Yeah, a wood tiger, and the Chinese or moon calendar.
Yeah. Chinese
and
astrology.
a double Taurus on the April 22nd, 1974. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just
That's
now.
amazing.
I'm like, oh, and it's your numerology now. Let's not go there.
Yeah.
It's just funny you say that, because it's like you're like double bull. I think when I looked at, because I only recently looked at my astrological chart for our tarot course, because I wanted them to do theirs, because some people didn't know what their ascending sign and blah blah blah, all that stuff. Like I just said, I'm interested. What are all your ascending signs? Yada yada. And it's when I did that, I was like, holy fuck, I'm so water. I'm pretty much everything in Cancer, a few things in Scorpio. I think I have one thing in Libra. I think it's my moon is in Libra, but the rest of it's all water, 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 water. And then I'm a wood rat, but born in the hour of water. So I'm like,
so you've got it in there too.
I'm just water everything. I'm a crybaby. I'll call myself out on it.
You need water to grow, right?
That's right. You can't live without water.
Water also erodes the earth, which is representative of abundance. So like,
true.
jokes. Okay.
Well, it was. One last thing on that. It was very funny because 2020, April 22nd was a new moon. Well, it was a new moon too, so it was like I was like, oh, cool! It's going to be an awesome birthday because it's like this similar, and literally it was like very similar to when the new moon was. As when I was born, and I was like, this is going to be an awesome year. And then 2020 happened. And
it's like,
and 2020 is like, fuck you.
Exactly.
And I don't mean that literally.
No, but it was like, okay, we'll live up to it. You'll just kind of be, stay put.
Just stay where you are.
That just reminded me of that meme. What was the card though, Vicky? I sent it to you guys when we were doing the course. And they said they needed to introduce a new card for 2020 into the tarot deck, and it was literally just this.
Yeah. It's the hand coming out of the cloud.
But I can't remember what did they call the card.
No, I can't remember what it was either.
But anyway, there's a meme. Look it up, guys.
Yeah.
There's a meme for tarot card for 2020. No, before we do move on, there was one other thing I wanted to touch on, because we kind of mentioned it a couple of times. And yeah, I wanted to hear your take on this. So when it does come to social media, because obviously a lot of these a lot of these issues that are happening in the States, the reason why they have so much traction nowadays is because we live in the information age. And you literally like so many people I've spoken to, they're like, oh, why is Black Lives Matter a thing now? I'm like, it's not a thing now. It's always been a thing. It's just now we have a thing where you can open your phone and bam, you know exactly what's going on every corner of the globe. You can't, like, people think there's more war now. No, there's not. It's just you know about them now. Yeah. So like that's obviously how social media has now blown some of these things out into being global things. I'm interested to hear though your take on witches and their use of social media, because I know that you've got opinions, and I'm interested to hear them, because I think it's very valid, especially for our user base, because they're going to be listening to this on podcast and watching it on YouTube. So they're accessing us through social media. So yeah.
So, I mean, we talk in witchcraft and magical traditions about the power of the word, right?
Yeah.
And so, when you are on Facebook and you are, putting something out, a status, or you're sharing a meme, or you're sharing whatever, you're using that power, right? Well, you're also, if you think of that, what is that connected to? That is connected to the whole world, right? So you are literally channeling your words out, fueled by this energetic web. And it occurred to me once when I can't remember exactly how it came, but I posted something and it had an unintended consequence. And it really struck me, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't do that again. I can't have that impact. And so, there's a lot of folks, and well, I'm gonna speak in I statements. I'll speak in I statements.
It's okay. There's no judgment here.
No, that's it. Go for it.
You can be as real and upfront as you want to be as a Taurian.
That's it.
As a Taurus.
Double Taurus.
Yeah.
I think there's some folks who forget that. I think there's folks who are in the magical world who, will post stuff on Facebook or other social media, and forget that it's a reflection of who they are, and it's a reflection of the energy and the what they put into the world. And so, I will curate what I put out, not to like put on a show of, oh, this is, this is the only David you'll see, but because I know that there is power in the word. I know that there is power in this tool. And so if I am, for example, if I'm posting something and I'm talking about how I think of an example that doesn't point to any experience. Say I'm just talking about an interaction I had with an individual and how I just can't stand them and blah blah blah, and and it's all ego based. It's all coming from this, and I put that out. Well, I'm pushing my ego out. I'm pushing that out. Or and don't get me wrong, there are times when I will
Keyboard
Yep, get it going.
Yeah. But I think that as magical workers, we have a unique opportunity to utilize these tools in ways that I don't think they were envisioned to be utilized. We have the trim tab thing again. If I'm putting something out and I have an impact on people around me, that then has an impact on people around them. I've had folks who have come up to me and said, I really appreciate some of the stuff you put on Facebook. And then I had folks who I'd never met who had done that. And I'm like, wow, like it all clicked. It's like, okay, I'm putting this stuff out there and it's having this impact. So if what I put out there is, and I'm blanking, but it's, like gripey or snippy or, just not, and I don't want people to be happy-go-lucky all the time, but just be mindful of what you put out there and how you do it.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is I was talking about earlier that we have a tendency now to talk at each other and not talk with each other. And I think there's no perfect example of that than what happens on Facebook or Twitter. Where someone will, post something and then someone has to respond to it, and that another person has to respond to them, and it's like, this, how many times can I throw a knife at the bullseye to, type of thing, versus like, so can you tell me what motivated you to post that? Like, why do you feel that way? And engage in a conversation, or, ask questions and engage and have conversation. I am on a chat thing on Discord in a community that's a little more right leaning, but I got a variety of reasons I got into that, but I really am enjoying the conversations that we are having. And it's like I don't have to agree with what they are saying, but we can talk about where we're coming from and why we are having those experiences.
Yeah.
And I really wish that folks would utilize that ability in social media, because it is so powerful. It is, if you watched American Gods, the modern gods that have been created, the internet and social media is one of them. It is a powerful force.
Yeah.
And there are people who worship it. There are people who feed it. There are people who,
There is.
Yeah. And so how are you feeding your social media, deity? How are you feeling, and what do how are you utilizing it, that fetch that, that some traditions use, to do that? Because if you're constantly putting your ego in there, if you're constantly putting snippy or negative comments, then that's what you're creating. And you have the ability to not do that.
It's so funny that you say this, because like I love that feature on Facebook that has like memories where you can tap on it and see what you did this time last year, like the same date each year. I used to use it purely and simply of going, oh wow, this time last year I was on a holiday, share, because like I want to, like, as a looking at my memories. Now I'm actually using it as the opposite, because I've been doing a lot of shadow work of late, and now I actually try to, not to use this term, but religiously click on it every day, and I scroll all the way to the bottom and I see what did 13-year prior version of myself post on Facebook, and I'm actively deleting old posts, because the 13 years ago, back in 2007 when I got Facebook, like, oh my God, that guy was so full of so much bitterness. Like making comments about people on the train and people that I've seen in public, and about like, and like I'm reading what this person was writing, which is me. And just some of the stuff that came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my God. And then reading the comments of what some of my friends were saying to me, and how some of them are like pack of wolves, like, we all banded together and they jump into it. And they're like, like da 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 da. Like, I think there was one, like the only one that I'm willing to say on camera, I made some comment about, I think I was going to the gym a lot, and I think I made the comment saying like, leggings are not pants, like, because there was this, at the time everyone was wearing leggings as pants. It was before activewear, so activewear's come a long way since. I'm talking leggings that once you stretch them, you are seeing through them. Like, and I made this comment on there about leggings not being pants, and then all these people jumping onto that, and I look at it now and I'm like, I can't believe I actually posted that. Like, why was that relevant for social media? Why did I think I'm gonna post about this? So it's funny, because now I'm doing the opposite, which is like I'm going back and deleting and hoping that karmically corrects some of the energy that I've put out there.
But it's also a good way of being able to see growth as well, like to see how far you've come or whatever, and that now that doesn't align with who you are anymore. So you can move that on and recultivate that space.
So basing it on the same analogy then, if history just repeats itself, so if the old me would be akin to some of the things that Trump tweets, does that mean that the new me, like, does that mean that if I'm a product of what has happened, does that mean Trump has the ability to become the Dalai Lama? I'm joking.
I will say, I think that Trump has the ability to change who he is. Deepak Chopra did a thing. There was a show in the States called The President's Show. And it was a person who impersonated Trump interviewing other people. And so he had Deepak Chopra on it. And if you can look this up on the internet, on the YouTube or whatever, Deepak Chopra and The President's Show. Probably for me, the most amazing psychoanalysis of Trump that there is. But he ended up saying, "You have mastered the mudra of self-loathing."
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
but there's this whole kind of quasi psychedelic trip through Trump's brain, and
Yeah.
it's fascinating.
But I think that's the thing, though, that we all do have that ability when you actually stop and do that work and do
Hmm.
that healing and do those different things. So the only way we become that different person is by doing that work that we
Right.
were talking about earlier.
So the amount of times I wish I could go back and bitch slap 13-year
Yeah.
younger version of me. Oh,
Or give a hug to.
Yes. Yes.
bitch slap, then give a hug.
I'm trying to not do the negative self-talk.
No,
I'm
I'm
that's
joking.
right.
I'm joking.
But and there's things like
Understanding.
part of the internet, part of the Facebook stuff too, that it perpetuates some of this, because it's, again, the talking at and versus talking with is, there's the whole thing on was it TikTok and the witches, the baby witches cursing the
Yeah.
moon, or I
Yes.
don't have
God.
TikTok
Yeah,
because
I heard about that. Yeah, I heard of it, but I don't know.
I saw it because I'm one of those millennial witches that has TikTok. Although,
Okay.
yeah, I am one of those.
What's you do?
Okay.
Well, hang on.
I
In
know
my
you would.
defense, I got TikTok because I was finding it hard to connect with my nieces and nephews who are considerably younger than me. So
Uh-huh.
I'm like, well, all the kids are doing the TikTok thing.
All the cool kids doing it.
Yeah, so because Chris does the Snapchat thing, but Snapchat's so last century. Like TikTok
Right.
is the new thing. So I was doing the TikTok and doing all the funny little dances and the woes and the dabs and whatever else, and it's like a whole nother fucking language. Like to pardon my French.
It is.
But on the flip side, I've now formed a really good connection with my nephews and nieces. On
Yay.
the other side, though, well, actually not anymore, because I actually haven't opened it in a couple of months now.
Yeah.
Because I got sick of trying to keep up with all of the latest dance
The
trends.
trends and stuff.
I'm like,
Right.
it's doing my head in, like, it takes me 5 hours to learn this fucking dance that these kids do in 2 seconds. Like, no, I can't.
That's it.
But it did form an unhealthy addiction to looking and trolling and looking at all the things on TikTok. And then
Yeah.
I saw this thing about them cursing the moon. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah, like why?
okay, fundamentally you're missing the point with witchcraft, but okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Same.
But it's tying back into the conversation about where is that fed from? Like,
yeah, where does that come from?
Here's a platform that people, the platform itself is a platform, right?
Yeah.
But so is that from themselves? Is that their perception of witchcraft? Is that are they trying to live up to a certain standard? Who's setting that standard? What's the influence there? It's like this whole web of things that people don't realize that. And so if you step back and you're like, okay, so why do I need to do this dance? Or why do I need to,
to be
lip-
cool. To be cool. I want to be the cool uncle.
Right, but you already are cool. So
No, I know.
it's,
Yeah.
but see it. So it's the
That's
whole
it, it comes from that.
conversation, right? So yeah, it just we what's that Indiana Jones in the Temple or Last Crusade, where he's like, he has the choice of picking the
covenant,
The Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail.
yeah, the Holy Grail, right? And he
Yeah.
and then picks one up and goes, "You have chosen wisely," but the other people, "You have not chosen wisely," and then
They're done.
so it's like we have the ability to choose wisely and to think
Yeah.
about what we put out there and how we use social media, and because as witches we can be freaking powerful using that.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I've seen that the impact that it has. I've also seen where it becomes about self and it becomes about ego. And
when they do hashtag ritual selfie.
Right. And ego isn't a bad thing. I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I can't have any ego at all. But you have to have a healthy relationship with your ego.
Yeah. It can't drive the ship the whole time.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I actually think that look, I'll be honest, I selectively post things about my magical stuff, but I definitely, on the other side of it, this is something that Vicky and I have spoken about just one-on-one, and it was about the whole thing of like when you do the work and you do the spell or you do the magic and you send it out into the ether, but then you post a picture of it.
Right.
Like you're supposed to send it out and let it go, not send it
Right.
out and then when the next person comments on it, you invite it back in, and then you send it out
Exactly.
again, and then someone else comments or likes it, and then you open it back up again, you pull it back in. It's like, yeah.
Yep.
So there's also that
Yep.
side of it as well, which
Yeah.
So I try to do. I don't take photos of my actual spell work.
Mhm.
I take photos of the pre or the post, not the
Right.
actual, because the spell, it's supposed to be sacred. It's supposed to go out there.
Well, my frustration is when folks do candle magic, and then they post the candle, you know, on Facebook, and they're like, "Can you tell me what this means?" And I'm like,
Yes.
"You're the magic worker. Why don't you
No.
interpret what it means to you? Because that's why you did it, not to have other people interpret it for you." You know, it's giving their power away. It's giving their
Yeah.
magic away, you know? And it's just, I'm like, okay, you know,
I see
yeah.
the same thing with again, I don't want to open up another topic of conversation. I'm not being a judgy bitch, but sometimes I can be. I'm a gay man. It's my entitlement to be judgy every once in a while. But see, this is the thing. We're judgy, but in that way of, if you, like, I will tell you to your face.
Yes.
Yes, I won't just say it behind your back. I'd rather a friend who says something to my face than bitches about me to others. Anyway, so like I see people doing this thing where they post their question and then they post the tarot cards and then they want people to like, this was my question, these are the cards, what does it mean?
Right.
I feel like sometimes commenting, it means you need to enroll into my next tarot course so you learn to interpret these for yourself. Like,
or how about you sit down with the tarot cards and you maybe, you know, maybe if you don't know what they mean, you go through the book and you use that as a, you know, a divination tool, and you know, you create a whole experience out of it. Lighting some candles, looking at the cards, opening a book, reading it. How does it make you feel? What does it raise in you? All those kinds of things that maybe you know, you're not even using the traditional meanings of the cards, but you're using how it relates to you in that current situation.
to you,
Yeah,
which is the main thing now. Yeah, because it's like, it doesn't matter how the other 150 people who commented or whatever number of people that commented what their interpretation is, it means shit.
Right.
It's what your interpretation is, what resonates with you. And it's like, but I being a good little witch, I try not to get on there and troll them. I just scroll.
That's right.
I'm like, nope, not engaging in that one.
Right.
But it comes back to, like you were saying before, that step up, step back, listen and feel. Take that time to step back and listen and feel what it means for you.
Exactly that.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the spectrum. For example, you know, you can find like doing candle work or doing herbal work, and you're like, you know, I'm going to look at a book and it has this meaning. But maybe you've developed a special relationship with, say, rosemary or lavender or some other plant that doesn't necessarily correspond with what other people have developed. Use that relationship that you've developed. You know, don't rely necessarily on what other people are saying if you have a different feeling, because that's the important thing. That's the relationship that's important.
It's actually funny that you say that, because it's like, this is I know I keep opening up more cans of worms. She's probably like,
we're supposed to be
reeling it in. No. I'm a co-host. I can make decisions too.
I know, right? I know.
Joking. No, but
Let's see, like, where's the mute button? No.
Yeah, that's right. Damn it, he's got the control.
I have
He's got the control.
Oh, okay.
Remember what we said about wanting to control the world? I do.
He has the control.
No, but what I was going to say is that I also have the editing ability. So I can always cut half of the shit that I say out if I think it's like irrelevant. So what I was going to say is, like, it's funny because so many of the books that we read here in the Southern Hemisphere are written by people who live in the North. And they talk about all of the herbs and different things that are like magical properties, this, that, and the other. Half of them aren't even fucking available here in Australia.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not, like, I don't know
don't
where
grow here.
You can't get wolfsbane anywhere. You can't get belladonna. You can't get mandrake root. Like, you have to specifically grow them because they're not from this region. And so it's like we've always had to adapt it's either that or you're paying a ridiculous sum of money to import some exotic herb from another location. And then so many people have touched it along the way. I'm like, does this have as much magic or juju now that so many people have handled it? You know what I mean? So it's like,
what it's funny you bring that up, because when I was when Buck was studying from me, we had the conversation about you know, because there's certain directions that we will do when we do the Great Crossroads.
yeah, we
And
flip north and south.
Yes.
yeah, and he's like, well, but you know, for example, when we call into energy healing, we usually will go to the south, because the south, the sun, you know, will
Yeah.
generally from the south, um, and we'll go to the north because it's, you know, that's kind of the darker areas. Well, it's switched, and he's like, well, do I have to, you know, how do I do it? I'm like, do it the way you're called to do it. Like, you know, don't rely on what I learned. Use what I'm teaching you in your environment. And you know, I also said I was a student of Druidry, and one of the things I love about Druidry is that Druidry works with the spirit of the place and the conditions that you're in. So, for example, you know, there's the Om or Agam alphabet, which is based on the trees. Well, not all the trees that are in you know, England or Ireland or Scotland are here in the States. And so when you're working with those, I you know, I was taught, okay, so what's an equivalent here, and what's the energy? Is there an energetic equivalent? Or when you're working with a certain plant, you know, is there something here? Or tie into the energy of the place that you're in, and work with that. For example, in San Diego, because we're in Southern California, the seasons, although here in where I'm in Julian, it's a little different, but down in the city area, it's more desert, right? So you have generally a hot season and you have a wet season. And then maybe you have little parts here and there. So it's not the four you know, parts of the year. It may be a large part of this and a little bit of that. And so how do you work with that? How do you relate to that? Because again, if you're going to work with the magic around you, you have to work with the magic around you, right? So that's the important thing. And I think that for a lot of folks, it's like, okay, I've got to have my you know, this kind of herb and this kind of tool and this kind of that. Well, the most powerful tool that you have is yourself. Everything else, I will quote RuPaul in saying that you were born naked and all the rest is drag. And so you know,
I love it.
You were born a witch, and all the rest is drag.
I love that you gave us a RuPaul reference, because that's literally like the way I got through isolation, because we're still in isolation at the moment, is that we've been watching reruns of every season, every cycle. I feel like I could almost be on the show and do their lines for them. We've watched them that many times. But sorry, I didn't mean to throw that in there, but I just love a good RuPaul reference. I was actually going to ask another question, and I know, just I'm waiting for Vicky to be like, shut up. No, good. Because I actually wanted to ask that, because it's something that linking it to what we just said about the fact that for many years I was non-practicing, because all of the resources I have are so Northern Hemispherical centric, if that's even a word. I've made it a word, whatever. And because I used to be a perfectionist, so I always had to be perfect by the book. Anyway, I'm gonna scooch past that comment. Okay, we want to get there. Okay, no, anyway, just joking. Anyway, so for many years I was non-practicing, and it's only just when I say recently in the last few years that I've now suddenly found my mojo again. Because and I used to use this excuse that all my stuff is in storage because we're building our house. I can't do magical work without my things. Like I needed to have my altar set up, and I needed to have all my crystals and all of my this and that and whatever. And then it's like there was another part of me that was like, well, I can't really do magic because I can't really call myself a witch because I haven't been initiated into any particular tradition. Linking it back to my actual question, I gave you a bit of a backstory. How do you find with the similarities and differences between all the different paths? Because for some people that are like book geeks and think I have to do it by the book, they might find the fact that you're a student of Druidry and a brother initiate of the Unnamed Path and a fairy seership, like for them that's enough of a, pardon the French, head fuck, because they're like, well, this one says do it this way, this one says do it this way, this one says do it this way, but how do you bridge the gap and do the things without getting so caught up in your head about the differences?
This one,
you know, which one to follow, or
which tradition am I doing today?
Well,
or
today the wind is blowing southwest, so I'm going to go with that one. You know what I mean?
When I first started studying, I was and again, Druidry was my first kind of foray into magical working. I was one of those folks who was like, okay, so I have to have this tool, and I have to have this, and I have to have that.
Yeah.
And as I started studying and learning about other ways, I was like, oh, so it's and I'm going to use an analogy that Tommy uses because I think it's brilliant. Is that it actually came from our other partner, Virgil. Don't confuse the map for the terrain.
He did say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can look at the map and I can say, okay, I want to do this and I can do that, and maybe maybe there is conflict about certain ways they're doing, but guess what? Part of in those areas of ambiguity or areas of I don't want to say conflict, but kind of the between the worlds thing. So you have this on this side, and then there's magic in there. There's power in there, and so for me, it's not so much, well, it absolutely has to be this way. What I've grown into is I'm going to use the tools that I have in front of me, and maybe it's these tools this time, and maybe it's these tools this time, but I'm not going to get lost over the fact that that the tools are what's doing the work. I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
I'm utilizing the tools as an extension of who I am. And so that extension, goes maybe one direction one time and another direction another time, but it still comes back to me and my connection to spirit. It still comes back to me and my interaction with the magic around me. And so what I find is that it then becomes I become more flexible. I become more malleable in how I deal with situations because I'm able to call in different tools. That being said, there is nothing wrong with someone picking one tradition and sticking with that tradition.
Yeah.
And that, and if those tools meet your needs, that's wonderful. And Druidry met my needs for a long time and still do. But there was also a different aspect. I mean, one of the things that drew me to the Unnamed Path was the fact that as a gay man, there was a lot of heteronormative conversation that was around the magic. Now I can work my way through that. I can, when talking about if people talk about the great rite, or they talk about, we sometimes default to the god and the goddess, and I can work through that and I can, process that. But Unnamed Path allowed me to look at things in a different perspective and use that different energy. The fairy seership work really ties into connecting with the aspects of energies that exist in our universe that are the causation of magic, whether it be the physical, tangible matter that exists around us, or if you reach back into the, the beginnings of the universe and the Big Bang and that cosmic energy that's there, or so the different aspects of the underworld and the upper world, and so it all ties in for me in different ways, and so I don't get so much lost on how they conflict. Just the fact that here I am doing this work and it's having an effect on the world around me.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I have nothing else to ask because
I was about to say, you're going to ask another question.
No, you literally summarized everything I was hoping you would.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Because it's
perfect.
and I was using myself as an example only because I know that some people listening to this, because I'm in all of the Facebook channels now more than ever. And I see the questions that people are asking about, how do you choose the right path, and how do you choose, like, should you be in a coven? Shouldn't you be in a coven? Should you be solitary? Shouldn't you be in solitary? What's the benefits of this? What's the benefits of that? And it's like, and I remember when I was a little witchling and I got so bogged down in doing it the right way that I then, it's like, because I couldn't find the right way to do things, I just did nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've robbed myself of years of evolution as a witch.
Yeah.
By just doing nothing. And now it's like, I feel like I'm playing catch up with my old self, because it's like, now I finally realize, like, oh, I could do multiple things at once. And, oh, it doesn't matter if they conflict. And, oh, I don't have to always have that element in that quadrant, or I don't have to do a circle in order to do a spell. And I don't have to do a spell if I don't want to, or I don't need a tool. I can just go, my finger is my wand and my blood is my water and whatever. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Because I got
and we are the tool.
we are the tool.
Yes, Vicky, you're a tool.
Yes, I am.
I've been told that before. Well, and to those who are listening and maybe be in the same, because I was in that, not only just with magic but with life in general. There's certain things I'm like, I don't know. There's nothing wrong with starting at one place and changing where you're going. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes, and there's nothing wrong with doing a little bit and being that all you can do. There's a quote that I use often, which is it's funny because it's from Edmund Burke, who was a conservative politician, and it was nobody made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. And do a little. If you're new to witchcraft and you don't know where to start, then how about doing some meditation? If you don't know about working with spells or anything, then pick up a book, or maybe just, like, what does a spell mean to you? Like, if you want to do, what would you do? It's like, okay, so I'll write it down. Okay, so you just wrote down a spell. You just did magic. Maybe you put a candle out. You write down your spell, you put a candle out, and that flame represents the spell going out into the air, into the universe. So you don't have to. This work is all about ourselves and us empowering ourselves. And it's wonderful to be able to do the fancy stuff and the big ceremonies and the incense and the music. Right.
That's it.
Cher comes down and does a
time.
With Lady Gaga, and then
you have someone that says, "Who's Cher?"
Right.
Wrong demographic.
I know. Or so there doesn't have to be big. It just has to be, you. And if even if it's just, you know, say you want to get a new job, you know, just saying, so, you know, I'm looking for a new job and I'm open to seeing the new job.
Yep.
I'm open to seeing the new job. And that's magic.
There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You put it out there.
Yep.
That's it.
That's all it is. You're just putting your intention out there into the world,
Mm-hmm.
and then being receptive for what you
Mm-hmm.
notice, not micromanaging the fuck out of the universe.
Right. Because trust me, the universe doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah.
You are this small.
Uh-huh.
You are so insignificant.
Yeah. That's right.
You are. And then at the opposite spectrum,
Mm,
it's amazing the impact that you can have. So
yeah.
it's this weird dichotomy sometimes. Is
Yeah.
you can get lost in a rabbit hole, for lack of a better term, of the complex back and forth of working in magic and the interstellar connections that happen because of it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love a good rabbit hole. It's
Yes,
like
me too.
rabbit holes and
yeah.
rabbit holes and
It's
tangents.
so
That's
That's
which
where we
one's the
go.
worst? Which is the worst? The
I
rabbit
don't
hole or the
know.
tangent, or when the two of them come into the one conversation? Oh, forget it.
That's right.
Forget it.
Mhm.
Then it turns into a 3-hour podcast with Tommy.
That's right.
Right. Right.
No tea, no
Yes.
shade. Just that's where we ended up. Oh my god! No, this has absolutely been amazing. I know
It really has.
I've learned so much from you, even though
Yes.
I feel like I've learned so much new about you. Even like that's really bad English. Damn
That's
it! It's
okay.
my second language.
You're Australian.
Yeah.
That's right. We come from convicts. It's okay.
You just like cut all your words off. You know, it's like
we
Brecky
do.
and
Yes, we
let's see,
do.
you'd be Derry.
No,
No.
no, it's Daz.
Daz.
D-A-Z.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, it does.
All right.
Yeah.
Daz.
See, Vicky has
Yeah.
it because it's Vicky is Vicky, but you know.
No,
Well,
I get
actually,
Vic. I get
Vic.
Vic.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
she's
right.
Vic.
Yeah.
Wait,
Gotta
Yeah.
cut it off. There's always a way to cut off something else.
are you originally a Victoria or are you a Vicky?
No, I'm just Vicky. Yeah, Vicky.
Just Vicky, not
Just Vicky. I don't know why I always say that, but I mean it as in
You're not just anything.
it's Vicky.
It's only Vicky.
It's only Vicky. That's right.
Yes. No, but Darren, becomes Daz.
Daz.
Because there's a Z somewhere.
Yeah, I know. I don't know where we pull these Zs from.
No, but I think it comes from like
Yeah.
because Darren becomes Daz, Sharon becomes Shaz, Barry,
Yeah.
Okay.
Baron or
Okay.
Barry becomes Baz.
Baz, Kaz for Karen.
Yeah, Karen becomes Kaz.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I don't know what the whole
This is
thing
another bloody
is.
tangent, but you know how this whole thing of "Don't be a Karen" came out.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
A few of my friends posted on Facebook saying, "Does that mean that Darren would be the male equivalent of Don't be a Karen?" I'm like,
Well, I will tell
No.
you, when we were flying to Australia, and you know, we had left Los Angeles at 10:30 at night, so it was a night flight. So we finally got sleep. We're arriving, and the stewardess is leaning over us and waking us. She said, "Would you like brekkie? Do you want brekkie?" And then we're like, "Have we entered childland? Like, you know, is this
Where are we?
what is going on?" And I'm like, oh, brekkie, breakfast. Yeah, brekkie. We're like, yeah, breakfast. Yeah, brekkie. Okay. And it wasn't until we were awake and remembered that everything gets
Where
cut
we
off.
are. Yep.
Yeah, it's not child speak. It's, you know, it's baby
It's
speak.
just Australian. It's just Australian.
it's like if I was to say to you, David, I know this is way off topic, but I don't care. I'm gonna go with it. If I was to say to you, Sava, I'm gonna have a chocky beaker with my cuppa.
Oh my
I'm
god.
gonna have a chocolate biscuit with a cup of tea.
Yep, because I said
Well
Savo,
done.
which is the Savo. We
The
say
Savo.
Savo. Yeah, Savo. I'm gonna have a chocky beaker with my cuppa. Yep.
Well done. Well done.
I learned a little bit.
Yeah,
I was going to
well,
say,
that's
you
good.
learned the language while you were here.
Well, like this is again going off topic, but like at least you have learnt the language of the locals, unlike myself, who remembers going into Abercrombie and Fitch. Yes, I'm that guy who goes to America to shop at Abercrombie and Fitch. Well, I was that guy. yes. Anyway, I spent way too much money there. But I remember going in there and having an argument with the person behind the counter, and then they called over multiple other people from the shop, and then I was arguing with them because I was adamant that they sold this particular item in their store, and they were adamant that they did not. It turns out they did. I was just calling it the wrong bloody thing. So I was asking that person where to find their leather thongs.
Oh.
Yeah. About 15 minutes of back and forward, we then worked out that the word they were wanting was flip-flops.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I was saying, no, I've seen them. You sell leather thongs on your website. And the Americans are just like, what?
Like,
What shop are you in? I think this is the wrong
were you
shop.
looking
Yeah,
at?
that's right.
And it
No,
wasn't until one girl.
Wilson's Leather or Mr. S in San Francisco.
It wasn't until one girl come up and goes, wait, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Australia. And when you say thong, you mean the thing on your feet with the little thing between your toes that, you don't wear socks with? Oh, guys, he means flip-flops. And we're like, oh, yeah, those. Like, oh, they're over there. I'm like, oh, thanks.
Cheers.
Like, and in the meantime, the whole store was listening to me yelling leather thong in.
Right.
It's not one of my brightest favorites. Anyway, I digress. I'm going to shush now. I might get it cut out.
Well, I would say there probably were some folks in there who would love to see you in a leather thong. But...
And on that note, that's all we have time for today. Oh my god. There's no coming back from that. Now I've got an image.
No.
Thanks. You said to the person who has clairvoyance. Now I've got a picture of myself in a... No, anyway.
Just stay with that.
You're welcome.
No, let's
Yeah,
not say that.
that's the gift that just keeps on giving, isn't it?
I can't go on.
On that note. On that note, it has been... You've done it,
Darren. I'm
You've
sorry.
done it. I've never heard him speechless. You've done well. Oh, no, it has been the most amazing time getting to talk to you. I could keep talking for hours and hours and hours, but I'm sure you have other things that you need to get done and get doing. So thank you so, so much for your time. I've learned so much just in this short time we've got to chat to each other.
It's been awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this, because these conversations are they're just so good and so needed at this time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'm sure this is going to be the first of many conversations.
Yeah.
Both with you as well as with others. Like,
Yeah.
like, essentially, like, I know we said this off camera after the interview with Tommy, but like the reason why we set out to do this podcast is because we want to demystify what it means to be a modern witch. And when I say modern, it means encompassing all things that life is offering us right now, not just about hocus pocus mumbo jumbo. Like, it's about the real world things that we can be doing and how we can use our craft to influence and change everything that's around us and heal and everything else like that. So, and it's like, I know that in your mind, you're probably thinking, oh, I haven't written a book. I haven't come out with this or that. I've got no form of notoriety. Why me? But that's exactly why you. It's because we're not professing ourselves to be this podcast that's going to get all the most amazing guests. We will get all the most amazing guests, but it's our version of amazing guests. And for me, someone that has a unique voice about a unique path or about a unique situation, problem, whatever you want to call it, a take on something, to me is an amazing guest. So the fact that you were able to share with us so candidly, and I know that we took a slightly political turn in this episode, but it's what's needed. Like, sometimes because these are the conversations that people avoid because they don't want to have a fight with their neighbor about who's right and who's wrong. It's not about that. So I want to applaud you for all of your views.
Thank you.
Except for the one of putting an image in my head of me. There's no coming back from that now. So that's ingrained.
Like I said, that's going to be the gift that just keeps on giving. Thank you.
And for anyone that's listening and you see me on YouTube and have now got that image in your head, you can thank David for that. It was not my doing.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, yeah, so until next time, we hope you guys have an amazing day, and hopefully you can tune in to us again soon. I may end up, we're posting this entire video as one video on YouTube, but we'll probably end up chopping it into multiple episodes just for ease of listening, not because we're not going to cut anything out. I think it was all great, but we're going to do the same with Tommy, so don't worry. That's going to be my editing nightmare with my perfectionism. Yes. When is the right time to, anyway.
There we go.
But yeah, so tune in again, guys. So we'll post some links as well. Actually, before I say that, David, if they want to connect with you on any of the socials,
so I'm pretty much Dr. Shorey on all the interwebs, social media. So I primarily use Facebook. I am on Twitter. I do have an Instagram account. Don't expect much on Twitter or Instagram. So Facebook, and feel free to reach out to me. And happy to hear from you.
Awesome. So thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you again real soon.